Hey there everybody, I am going live on Instagram today. It's a little bit of a change from my usual Facebook live, but I thought I need to give my Instagram platform a little bit more love. So we're trying it out, Instagram live. If anything goes wrong, then I'll just have to wing it. So talking today about, I guess, something I see as one of the biggest problems that a lot of entrepreneurs have, and this is a conversation I have over and over again with heaps of people in my coaching groups and even in my Facebook group, is just that struggle on how do you actually get an ideal customer, because you often have more than one in mind. Now, because we're entrepreneurs, it's really common, because you are a person that sees opportunities. You are somebody who looks out there and sees all of the abundance of opportunities that there are. And it's really, really hard to feel like you're narrowing down, or you've got to leave some behind. And this would be the number one reason why it's so hard to find an ideal customer or to create your avatar. And I think if that's you, you probably have found that you just stop halfway through the process because it's just too hard to pick just one. So I wanted to talk to you about that today because, of course, if you do have more than one ideal customer, it's not the end of the world. Yes, you can still do business. Yes, you can definitely still be successful if you have more than one. It's just going to be a little bit harder for you. I think you'll find any time that you've gone to do any sort of marketing activity, so maybe you're looking at your social media or your email, or you're redoing your website, and whoever you're working with, the first question they're going to ask is, well, tell us about who it is you're targeting. And this is where you commonly will start thinking, oh dear, okay, and then you run through a list of prospective customers, or maybe even describing who your current customers are. And then that leaves everybody in a bit of a muddle as to, okay, well, what should we really do here? How do we find the right words to use? How do we find the right imagery? Or how do we design for that ideal customer? And this is where it can get really, really hard. So when you have more than one ideal customer, it tends to be a few of these different scenarios. So I'll talk them through, and anytime you want to jump in and ask a question, just pop a question in the comments, because more than happy to answer your questions as well. So one of the first reasons why you might have more than one ideal customer is because you've got multiple services. And so of course you've got lots of different services happening, and therefore you feel like, well, it's not all for one customer. That's normal, of course. Now, I would be saying to you, have a look at your service stack. Do they stack together so that you might have an ideal customer that is at different stages of their business life, but that there is a synergy between them. And in that case, you really can start to narrow down it being one ideal customer, but you'll tweak your messaging for your different services because you're speaking to them at a different phase in their life cycle. So that's what I like to really look at when you've got more than one, is how can you ring fence around it and still talk to that person with those same needs, but maybe at different stages. So you can do that if you have multiple services. If you have multiple different people, you feel like, well, I've got this great service that I offer, but there's so many different people who need it. And then whenever you go to do a custom avatar template, they probably start off with demographics, and that's where you stop, because you're like, well, it isn't just a man, or just isn't just a woman, or they're different ages, all of those things. So you kind of stop before you even start. Now, what I want you to do, if that is you, is ignore the demographics, okay? Because what you are trying to look for is what is common between your ideal customers. And it may not be the fact of their gender, it may not be their age, it may be something specific that they are experiencing right now in their life. So for example, maybe it's, if you're looking at people with wellness in the wellness space, and it's you particularly help them with their gut health or their hormone control, there would be something much more specific you could describe that is relevant for your ideal customer, that doesn't have to do with, their age or where they live or other factors that are what I would call your standard profiling of your ideal customer. So I want you to really think outside of that. If those aren't relevant for you, just ignore those parts of it and go on to the pieces where you can really define down what is it that is common. Because the more specific you can be, once you've figured out what that is, then you can start to deep dive even further into the psyche of them. What are they experiencing right now? What are they thinking now? What are they feeling? What are they doing? And what is it that they want to be thinking, feeling, and doing? So you can still create an avatar without giving it a gender or an age or where it lives. It's much, much more important that this is specific to you and your business. So, when I do my customer avatar profiling, I actually have a 35 question worksheet that's really deep. But it's the important parts are more about what they already know, what they think, what they believe, and not so much about the demographics. For some people it is relevant, and that's great, and that's why those questions are in there. But for me, it's much more about the other questions. I've got 5 different sections in the worksheet, and you go through each one, and it is much more about what are they thinking right now. Because when you're targeting a customer, it's about the psychology, and it's really about talking to them about what they are thinking right now and what you want them to think, or what you want to teach them might be possible, or that there is an alternative, and obviously that you're the solution for that. The only way that you get that sort of copy that really speaks to them is when you are when you're dialed into what they're thinking as opposed to who they are. So hopefully that makes sense. And hey Marina, good to see you today. Just shout out with any questions if you have any while I'm chatting through. I'm more than happy to answer any. So yes, that's if you've got multiple customers, but maybe more of a defined service. Bigger companies, I find, tend to have a bit of both. They've got multiple services going on and multiple ideal customers. And what happens in that case is it's a lot harder, because you do have to multiply what you're doing with your marketing for each service type, and also to speak to each of those ideal customers. And that's why when I work with my clients, I really advise them to really get serious about it and think, well, what is the main thing that you want to be known for? And let's look at your, financials, let's look at your projections of your service and see what is the most profitable way for you to niche, so that you can achieve those goals. You'll find that there's often been services that creep in because clients ask you for them, and you think, I can do that. And so you add it to your stack, and you add another one and add another one. And what happens is that you tend to evolve over time and grow your services, but they're not all really your specialization. They're not all where you are potentially a real authority on the topic or an expert in the topic. So when you come to marketing, it's not about marketing everything that you do. It's actually about marketing what you do best. Becoming known for the thing that you're really good at, so that you have some authority in the space, and that attracts the right clients to you. Obviously would be interested in your key competency, your highest paid services, and then if they do go on to buy other things from you, then that's great, but you don't need to make them part of your market positioning. So I'm hoping that makes a bit of sense, and that's, it's all doable. Literally, the thing is that anything you want to do in business is possible. It's just that it's a lot easier for you if you do narrow down. If you narrow it down to a specialization and also an ideal customer for that specialization, then you've got a much clearer way to answer the question, well, what do you do? You know exactly what you're saying. You know how to talk to them. You know what it is, and you don't have to waffle on or reel off a list of things, because as soon as you start listing, that person's going to sleep. And we don't want that. We definitely want them to get it. We want them to understand what you do and to, really understand why someone would want you to help them. What is that outcome that you get for them? And that's really the key to having that specialization, and be really, really clear on it and clear on who you help and why. So this is, I guess, in a nutshell, what I would say what you do if you do have more than one ideal customer is to choose whether you want to continue having multiple or if you want to narrow down. I had some clients I worked with last year, and they really struggled. They narrowed it down to 3. So they said to me, look, I cannot go any less than 3. There's 3 distinct groups. So we literally went through and did by 3 times, 3 lots of service packaging, pricing, copy, really deep diving into their avatars. So it's 3 times the amount of work. And when you're a small business and you've got limited time and resources, tripling your workload isn't necessarily the smartest idea. But they were adamant that they needed to have all 3, and that was, really as narrow as they could get. So we went ahead with that, and I helped them to create their website so that they could talk to all of them, but then also deep dive into each ideal customer so that you could have that specific messaging. But what was funny was that 6 months later, they came back to me and said, you know what, we've tried this and our business has gone really well. They actually tripled their business. They were profitable. They were paying themselves a salary that was similar to their professional salary, and they were really happy. But they said, you're right, it was so much easier if we just chose one, and we've figured out which one we want to choose. So they were then going to narrow down even further and just go with one, because they saw that there actually wasn't a restriction on niching down into one. There was so many people who fit into that one that they would never be able to service them all anyway. So it was really, really handy for them to be able to experience what it was like to have more, but then to understand that they actually had nothing to be afraid of in reducing it down to one, because there were so many people who fit that profile, and they could really do their best work and position themselves in that space so that people knew them as, this is the expert that I want to go to for help for that. Makes it much easier for other people to refer to you when you have that really defined message about who it is that you are, like what you specialize in, and also who you help. So if you're wanting a little bit more help with this, obviously I've just touched on quite a few things that you could have a think about and deep dive into today. But if you want to go further into this and actually go through step by step the process, the strategic process of, how do you narrow down your service offering to be more defined, so that you've got a specialization, or how do you decide which of your ideal customers is really the one that you want to go with, like what would be the best way for you to go. Then right now you can get my masterclass. It's straight from my coaching programs with the same worksheets and sort of the same process that we go through in one-to-one, but you can do it as an online masterclass. And it's a Uncover Your Unique Niche and Ideal Customer Masterclass. It's a 2-part training. Each part of that, it has lessons in there, and you can get that now at the moment at a reduced rate for $99. So if you just go over to my website, it's jessicaosborne.com/niche, and you can find that masterclass. You can get it on its own or even in a bundle where I've put 2 other masterclasses together with it, and you can save $280 by buying all 3 together. So it's firstly about what is your market position, what is it that you are and who you serve, getting really clear on those. Then the next masterclass is about messaging, how to create really magnetic messaging to attract your ideal customer using all of that intel you've just discovered in your profiling of your ideal customer. And the third masterclass is about creating an irresistible lead magnet and a strategy behind what makes a good lead magnet that makes it irresistible and wants those ideal customers to jump into your email list where you can nurture them towards a sale. So all 3 together you can get today for $147, which is a saving of $280. So it's a crazy deal. I've only got it going for this week. So if you're wanting to deep dive into that further, then please pop over to my website now before the price jumps back up to the normal rate. It's definitely worthwhile to get on it at the moment. But that's really all I have for you today. And if you had any questions about anything I've talked about today, then please shoot me a DM. I'm very happy to respond to you in private as well. And otherwise, I'll see you guys soon. Okay, bye. Oh, how do I? Now I don't know how I hang up. Bye, everyone.